First question, how would you define space? There are countless approaches to define a term for the concept of space. In philosophy, sociology, and perhaps a little more matter-oriented in physics, and not least in our own field of architecture and city. Let's try a quick impromptu attempt at a vocabulary of our own. Space in an architectural or urban sense is probably always dependent on human perception. But now that we live, abstractly speaking, in the age of the Anthropocene, we can no longer allow this to happen. Nevertheless, let's start from here. Perhaps the most obvious is the limitation of space by physical boundaries. In the German language there is the term die Germania Wand, roughly translated into English, your own four walls, which already points to a specific quality of space. Is it my space, your space, our space, or do we have no claim to this space at all? First and foremost, of course, this means the apartment or house as the immediate living space. Four walls can also clearly describe the room in which we do other things, and we will always be able to imagine this room quite well. In theatre studies one speaks of breaking through the fourth wall, which means nothing other than that the stage is usually surrounded by three walls, and the fourth wall is not only thought to be transparent to the audience, but the actors are not only able to cross this border, they are even supposed to. The scale can be much bigger. Sometimes one wall is enough to make very, very large rooms distinguishable as such by separation. This applies, for example, to the insane wall between Mexico and the USA. This applied to the wall between East and West Berlin. And this applies to the no less insane division of Europe and the world by the so-called Iron Curtain, which was only colloquially a curtain, materially a fence and in reality a wall. Recent events have shown us more than impressively how quickly walls can be built or rebuilt. And this brings us back to the quality of space and the question, what would you call a good space? Well, if you think about the leap in scale just now, you can at least exclude what is not a good room, any room that imprisons or excludes. Conversely, space that includes would be good. This is a very politically motivated understanding of space. And here at the latest we touch the counterpart to the physical essence of architecture, its immaterial meaning. Because, if we try to think again about physical space, what a flag rammed into the ground of the moon means spatially, I can no longer grasp it spatially. But I know what the design of this flag wants to tell me. As people who spend their lives thinking up architecture, planning and building it, dealing with architecture in immaterial formats, teaching architecture, discussing it, and so on and so forth, we know that in general, and in the field of architecture and the city specifically, the issue is naturally embedded in much more complex networks. For us, however, all this is inseparable. And it is not easy for us to understand or even tolerate an almost lyrical concept of space that starts from the assumption that architecture itself is an autopoietic space with which social life, politics, economy and so many other things have nothing to do. This is one of the reasons why the spaces we can enumerate when asked about space that truly stuck in your mind are less spectacular in the sense of a high glossy aesthetic that is accessible to very few of us anyway. In recent years we have opened our own small canon of projects in which we can at least begin to recognize the things that seem important to us about architecture and space. We will limit ourselves to 3 today. All 3 more or less residential buildings. All 3 with the claim to offer many a roof over their heads. All 3, however, also with the claim to provide the individual with high-quality space so that he or she can understand themselves as part of different socialities. We list the 3 projects without gradation, or group grants. Terraced house settlement grants. On one of the firewalls says, the stuff that dreams are made of. Then the Altala Residential Park by Harry Gluck social housing with swimming pools on its roofs. And finally, the urban expansion of the coastal city of Split called Split 3, where one could talk a lot about Yugoslavian financing and planning culture and which, without becoming postmodern kitsch, offers large-scale housing construction with urban space that can be experienced on foot on levels -2, -1, 0, 1 and 2,